Welcome to Power Talks with Santosh Sir. Today we have a very special guest, His Excellency Mr. Rakesh Sood, the Ambassador of India to Nepal. The world's largest democracy, an emerging economic and political superpower, launching of its own space satellite, phenomenal success of its film industry at the Oscars, India is a success story. On the sad note, recently on 26th November, Mumbai witnessed a tragic terror attack. The world saw it as the most horrific terror attack after 9/11. Your Excellency, post 26/11, how is the world looking at India's efforts in combating terrorism?
As you said, this was one of the worst terrorist attacks that we have seen in recent times. And we now have very strong evidence as to how it was planned, how it was executed, and where the people came from. The people of India, the government in India, and our friends in the international community of nations who have joined us in the global fight against terrorism are working together to try and ensure not only that such attacks cannot be repeated, but that the perpetrators of these attacks are brought to justice and held responsible for it. That is the purpose of all the effort that is being made to put pressure on Pakistan to deal with this problem, because not only is it a source of insecurity for Pakistan, it is also a source of insecurity for our region and indeed for the international community.
How is the international community supporting India's initiative in combating terrorism?
I think we have seen the international community step up, and there has been literally universal condemnation of these attacks. As you know, we prepared a detailed dossier consisting of evidence on these from one of the people who we had arrested, who was undergoing trial, Ajmal Kasab, from the information that he has given to us. From the boat that we confiscated, we have found GPS instruments, we have found cell phones, we have found satellite phones, we have had calls that have been made which have been traced, we have found voice over internet protocol evidence, we have found evidence as to where the monies for the VoIP accounts were transferred from, and all of this has been shared with the government in Pakistan. It has also been shared with a lot of other countries who have faced these problems and who are together with us in this fight against terrorism. All this has helped to bring pressure to bear on the Pakistani authorities and the Pakistani government so that they take necessary steps to deal with this problem.
And how is the progress taking place in dealing with Pakistan on this issue?
Well, we had handed over a detailed dossier to Pakistan, as I mentioned to you. We received a set of questions from the Pakistani authorities to which detailed replies have been given. We hope that the steps that so far Pakistan has taken can be further strengthened so that these terrorist organizations which operate from the soil of Pakistan their actions can be ended once and for all, and the people who are guilty can be brought to justice.
Has this affected the peace relations between India and Pakistan?
Well, naturally there has been an impact, because we would like to see Pakistan act on its commitment which was made many years ago when General Musharraf was the President of Pakistan, and he made this commitment in January 2003, if I remember correctly, when he said that Pakistan will not use its soil to execute any kind of terrorist attacks on India. This was a commitment that was also subsequently repeated by General Musharraf and other leaders of Pakistan. We would like to ensure that Pakistan make good on its commitment that has been made.
When we look at the population in Mumbai after 26/11, the people in Mumbai have really come together. The celebrities, sports stars, common people have grouped together and pledged against terrorism. How is the government of India looking at this spontaneous movement that the people have come up with?
The movement is, in a sense, spontaneous but also entirely expected, because every time there is a tragedy of this magnitude, we find that people in India have a tendency to come together. I think this is the strength of India, This is the resilience of India. And in this kind of coming together of people, it is not a question of people who are either from one community or another community, people who are living, who are rich people or poor people. This is something where rich and poor, all religions, all language groups, all ethnic groups, because as you know, Mumbai is like a melting pot. And the fact that they have come together shows the strength and unity and resilience of the Indian society.
Will the government take any concrete strategy in involving the civil participation in combating terrorism?
Ultimately, whatever be the role that the police and the intelligence agencies can make, terrorism is something which requires the active support and cooperation of citizens groups that are aware and concerned about it, and they find in government a responsive government which deals with their concerns.
We have seen India as an emerging economic leader. Has the current global economic crisis affected the Indian economy?
The current global economic crisis has had an impact on the Indian economy, but the Indian economy was primarily domestic demand driven. Therefore, the impact that it has had is that it has forced us to downscale our growth, which was targeted at somewhere between 9.5 and 10% annual growth. The Planning Commission and the Ministry of Finance have just announced that they will be bringing down the growth figures to somewhere between 6.5 and 7% for the current year. Now, this may sound as a very high growth rate by many standards because it is one of the highest in the world today. But nonetheless, for India, which was growing at 9.5%, it marks slowing down of 3%. We feel that we have lost a lot of time and we need to make up on time in order to address the ambitions of our young people. And therefore, to that extent, we will not be satisfied with 6.5 to 7%. The Prime Minister just said yesterday that he hopes that within 6 to 7 months, we will be able to move back the growth rate to the earlier trajectory.
The current global economic crisis has affected the developed nations more, but in any way is that a boon for India's economy?
It is certainly not a boon for India's economy because India among the developing countries has been in the vanguard of the movement for globalization. Indian expertise in the new fields of technology and engineering is something that is widely recognized all over the world. The changeover of the millennium during the Y2K, it is widely reported that it was the Indian software engineers who worked night and day to iron out all the bugs in the different computing systems all over the world to ensure that there was no breakdown of the kind that was apprehended earlier on. Now, so therefore, I don't think there is any country that benefits from the current global recession. But yes, some countries have been affected more and some to a lesser extent. The question is, how soon can the international community understand the challenge that it poses to us, and instead of getting into a reactive mode of protectionism, which would be dangerous, actually moves in the direction of greater cooperation with each other so as to overcome and recover the drivers of the globalization movement.
We've seen of late that a lot of Indian origin economic leaders are taking over multinational companies. We see them in newspapers and like magazines like Time, Newsweek, Business World. How do you feel about this success of Indian economic leaders?
No doubt this is something which is very encouraging. But as you know, India is a large country. We have a large population. And one of the biggest investments that we made when India became independent was in the field of education. We set up, at that time, the Indian Institutes of Technology. We set up institutions like the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and other medical training institutions. We set up the Indian Institutes of Management. And I think that all of these have brought about a qualitative change in the Indian youth, and it has made the Indian youth more confident, more globalized, more ambitious, and able to be a responsible global citizen. So when we hear about Indians taking over as CEO of, say, Citibank or as CEO of PepsiCo or any of the other large multinational corporations, I think it is a perfectly natural development.
India is also a country with a lot of economic contrasts. Recently, the Oscar award-winning movie Slumdog Millionaire has portrayed this very artistically. What does the future hold for economically marginalized society of India?
India is a very large country, and naturally there are disparities in Indian society. India, in some ways, is also a young country because, after all, we only became independent in 1947. When we embarked on this exercise of making India into a democracy with an economic development, it has taken us a long time to harness the resources that we have in India, both in terms of manpower and material resources. Now that we have embarked on a certain rate of economic growth, there is no doubt that the poverty levels have also come down. That is why people today talk of the large Indian middle class, which ranges anywhere from 300 to 500 million people and is one of the largest middle classes anywhere in the world. With the kind of economic growth rates that we have and with proper social policies, I have no doubt that we will be able to eliminate poverty, we will be able to eliminate the kind of extreme deprivation, and we will be able to ensure that there is social justice for those sections of society which have so far been underprivileged.
The newly elected American President Obama said that he also wanted to watch the movie Slumdog Millionaire. During the Bush administration, India and USA relationship really got strengthened. What does President Barack Obama's victory mean to India?
The India-US relationship has actually grown in strength with the end of the Cold War, and it has moved forward in different ways. We saw a lot of opening take place during the Clinton administration. Then we also saw more strengthening of the relationship during the Bush administration. And I have no doubt that with the Obama administration coming into place in Washington, we will see a further strengthening between the two countries. The reason is that the India-US relationship is driven today by the interaction between two large democracies, two large plural societies, two societies that actually want to let their people be free, let them exercise their imagination, and give them space so that they can achieve their ambitions. And these are two countries, therefore, that feel that in that context, there is a lot of give and take. Don't forget, there are 2 million Indian Americans who hold very high positions in the corporate sector, in the education field, and now also there are some like Bobby Jindal, who's considered to be one of the youngest governors, and he belongs to the Republican Party. Similarly, there are other Indian Americans who are in the Democratic Party and who are involved in policy-making work. So I have no doubt that we will see this relationship become stronger during the Obama administration.
Your Excellency, will continue with our conversation after a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Power Talks with Santosh Sir. We are in conversation with His Excellency, Mr. Rakesh Sood, the Ambassador of India to Nepal. Your Excellency, you took your office last year after the Constitution Assembly elections and saw the formation of the Constitution Assembly. How do you envision India's role in this historical transitional phase of Nepal?
As you know, India and Nepal have shared a very close relationship. It is a relationship that is born out of historical ties, of geographical linkages, of cultural and religious linkages. In short, it is a relationship like a relationship between families, a relationship that is driven by the people to people. I think it is a great opportunity for India and for me personally to be here to see this historic transformation that is taking place in Nepal. And I have no doubt that it will make Nepal stronger, more prosperous, more stable, and an important partner in this region and with India.
Do you see the peace process of Nepal completing in the next few months and the new constitution being written?
Well, the peace process is something that is, the conclusion of which is absolutely important for Nepal. Earlier it was said that it would be completed within 6 months. That has not happened. We have actually seen the deadline extended. And now the Prime Minister of Nepal, he has said that it will be completed by June or July 2009. India has supported the peace process, and we would be certainly ready to help in ensuring that the peace process is brought to a logical conclusion as early as possible. Regarding the Constitution, there is a deadline that the Constitution should be completed by the middle of 2010, a deadline that can be extended by the Constituent Assembly by a period of 6 months. Progress in the Constituent Assembly was somewhat slow to begin with, but now with different committees having been formed, with members of the Constituent Assembly having traveled and having got the views of the people of Nepal, and now I hope that this process can be accelerated so that a new constitution can be developed.
How has your stay in Nepal been so far? Have you had time to travel out of Kathmandu? Or does Kathmandu keep you very busy?
Well, Kathmandu has a tendency of keeping one busy, but I have enjoyed my travels out of Kathmandu. I have been in the north to Pokhara, to Jomsom and beyond. And I have been in the Tarai. We have a consulate in Birganj. We have a camp office in Biratnagar, which was set up after the breach in the Kosi embankment. I have also been to Jhapa and Ilam, and I hope to be able to travel before I complete my tenure here. I hope that I will be able to travel to all the 75 districts of this country.
Prior to Nepal, you were ambassador to Afghanistan, and during your tenure, the India and Afghanistan relations saw a lot of solidarity and strength. What were the major achievements in Afghanistan during your time?
Well, as you know, Afghanistan went through a very, very tragic period in its history. It went through nearly 30 years of civil war and all kinds of fighting. Then it went through a very repressive Taliban regime. When I went to Afghanistan in 2005, Afghanistan had just started on the process of reconstruction. During my 3 years in Afghanistan, we were not only able to establish a very close relationship between the Afghan government and the Indian government, but also strengthen our economic cooperation program. When I went to Afghanistan, our assistance commitment to Afghanistan was less than $400 million. By the time I left 3 years later, the assistance commitment to Afghanistan had increased to $850 million. This included infrastructure projects like power transmission lines, roads, highways. It included educational projects like schools, vocational training centers. It included other community development projects. It included telecommunication projects, setting up telephone exchanges and so on. Also included a large number of Afghans who had been denied education, for them to have scholarships to be able to go and study in India, which, as you know, is emerging as a major hub of education in this region, and in fact even globally.
I often hear some foreign experts talk about the similarities between Nepal and Afghanistan, and you being the ambassador to both countries, do you feel there's any similarities?
Well, the similarity is that the Afghan people are also very friendly with India, and so are the people of Nepal. But I think in terms of the tragedy of history, I think Afghanistan has been through a much more traumatic time in its history, because the civil war in Afghanistan has lasted for more than 30 years. And Afghanistan lost nearly 1/4 of its population became refugees. The Afghan population of about 25 million actually became much less. And Afghanistan had in 2001 something like 7 million people living abroad as refugees in Pakistan, Iran and many other countries. I think in that sense, Nepal has been much more stable, and Nepal, the people of Nepal have been able to conclude their own peace process without having this kind of conflict and this kind of tragedy. And I hope that if the government and the Constituent Assembly in Nepal can actually conclude their peace process and complete the new constitution within the deadline, we can see a new era of prosperity and development emerge in Nepal.
During your time, will we see some renewed focus on the relations of India and Nepal in terms of culture, music, art? Because that's your hobby as well, and that's what our two countries have shared in the past. Because right now we see a lot of politics dominating the focus of Nepal and India.
I think what has happened is that politics has dominated the people of Nepal in recent times. And that is why the focus has been more on politics. But at the same time, let's not forget that between India and Nepal, we also have a lot of other areas of cooperation and relationship. Even now, there are a large number of Nepali students who go to India to study. And they study not only engineering or medicine or commerce or economics or history, but many of them go to India to study fine arts. They have traditionally, many of your artists here have studied in Banaras, and many of them have studied at the JJ School of Arts in Mumbai. Similarly, many young Nepali students go to India to study music, because many of these traditions are common between the two countries. So there is a lot of cooperation. We have, and in years to come, I think this should increase, because as the art movement in Nepal becomes stronger, there are more galleries that get set up here. We should be able to have shared art camps, art exhibitions, music concerts, theater festivals, and a host of activities like that, which will help in bringing the people of the two countries together.
Will we see that focus during your time?
I certainly hope so.
Your Excellency, in recent times we have seen there's been a lot of coverage on our political leaders travel to Delhi. Even some leaders in the government have commented on this. What is your comment?
You know, there have been visits by the former Prime Minister, Mr. Girja Prasad Koirala, but as you know, he has not been in good health. He went for medical treatment. There have been visits by the former king. He went on a private visit. And these are not visits which are political visits in that sense. And while there have been some concerns that have been expressed in certain sections of media, I think we have to take this with a degree of balance. There are Nepali citizens, Nepali leaders, many of them who have old linkages, old friendships in India. And not every visit has to be interpreted as a political visit.
After the formation of the government, the new government last year, there has been constant talk about the revision of 1950 Friendship Treaty. What is the current status?
This was a subject that was taken up when the Prime Minister visited India last year in September, and the government of India said that we would be very happy to sit down with you and see what are the areas of the treaty that need to be revised and updated. Now, after that, I have on more than one occasion actually taken up the matter with the Nepal government to understand as to when we should begin the process, but so far we have not received any confirmation regarding dates or issues that we need to take up. It is an old treaty, but it is also a treaty that has been the bedrock of the close relationship between the two countries. In the past also we had received a request from Nepal asking that the treaty be reviewed. We had set up a group at the Foreign Secretary level. This was more than 10 years ago. The group had a few meetings, but then was not in a position to come up with any clear suggestions, and both countries then decided to let the treaty continue as it was. We will wait and see what the Nepal government would like to come up with in terms of how they would like the treaty to be revised. We would be ready to do so.
Who's more interested, India or Nepal, to revise this treaty?
So far, the request for revising the treaty has come from the government of Nepal on both occasions, as I said, during the 90s and then recently in September when the Prime Minister visited India.
The terror attacks has been on the rise in India, and I think a secure Nepal, especially the border, would be of paramount importance. Post Madhes Andolan, we have seen a lot of coverage in the local media in Tarai about the rise in the criminal and terror activities. What is your comment on this, and what is Nepal and India government doing on this, in this regard?
It is very important that the Nepal-India border, which as you know is an open border today, be made secure. This is a very key concern for India, which has been a target of terrorist attacks. And I think, therefore, the recent rise in criminal activity and the nexus between criminals on both sides of the border is a matter of grave concern to us. It is a subject that we've taken up at the Home Secretary level talks between the two countries. On a pilot project basis, we are already starting a process of monitoring movement of people and goods at some of the points on the India-Nepal border. I hope that both sides can cooperate in making this a successful pilot project, because this will help us to ensure that the open border, which is actually something which helps the people of both countries, is not misused by terrorists for their own ends and leading to a problem on maintaining this open border.
How hopeful are you that this will work?
I think that with cooperation between the police on both sides, with cooperation between the intelligence agencies and cooperation at the political level and understanding at the political level, that this is a very serious issue and has to be dealt with on priority, we should be able to deal with it.
Your Excellency, Nepal and India has had friendship ties over thousands of years, and we have shared mostly on the trade, culture, religion, but of late we have seen that it's the politics between the two countries that has dominated the concern and talks of the people. Will we see some shift or some more focus on the issues that affects the common people's life more?
Nepal and India enjoy a very strong relationship and a very multidimensional relationship. And naturally, therefore, we have the kind of interaction that we have been seeing. In the past also we have had the interaction where politics has dominated at times, but I think it depends upon what is happening in Nepal at that time. I remember when in the 1950s, or early 1950 actually, when King Tribhuvan, he went and took refuge in India. And at that time, that was again a period where politics dominated India-Nepal relationship. During Jan Andolan 1, again politics dominated India-Nepal relationship. And during Jan Andolan 2, again politics has dominated the relationship. But all this time, there has also been a lot of people-to-people contacts, a lot of people-to-people relationship, because this is something that is driven by our shared history and our geographical proximity. So I think that gradually what will happen as Nepal develops and as we are able to move forward together in raising the level of living of the people, and they become more prosperous from trade, from education, they are able to realize their own ambitions, they are able to achieve their own self-actualization goals. I think we will find that there will be less and less of politics and more of just shared human development.
We hope that during your tenure there will be more people-to-people relations strengthened. See you next week, the same time. Thank you for being with us.